Good afternoon. Good afternoon to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for this event. We really appreciate it. We are aware that you're all very busy at school. So we really do appreciate the time that you've made to join us in this much anticipated conversation that we feel is a very important one. And not just because it's Women's Month. And on that note, just before I even continue, I'd just like to say happy Women's Month to all of you. We do see the work that you do. We appreciate it. We know it's selfless work, but we do see and we observe the way that you do it, on a daily basis. And for that, we're really very thankful to all of you for the hard work that you put in, the commitment that you show to your profession. So on that note, I just want to say thank you very much. And again, thank you for making the time to join us this afternoon. Before I hand over to the program directors of the day and the speakers, I just want to say, thank you to our partners. My name is Rebuile Matabe. I'm with the Umlambo Foundation. But in putting together this event, we had a very good partner with us from Teachers Can. So I just want to extend a very heartfelt thank you to Teachers Can. This process of putting this together has been a seamless one, and it has been very, very gratifying and very enjoyable, especially because we are two entities that are like-minded. This is really our DNA. So it was really a meeting of the minds, and it's proven to be really very good. And seeing how much we can kind of leverage on each other to serve you and make sure that we support you in your work. So thank you very much to Teachers Can for that. So I'm going to hand over to Umamzoleka Libilo, who is the principal at Alexandra High. And they are part of the Umlambo family. I need to mention that Umamzoleka has been with Umlambo since it started. So she's really part of the family, and she's been part of the family for a very long time. She will make the introductions. She will introduce you to everybody who is going to be speaking this afternoon. So over to you, Mam Zoleka, sorry. And thank you again, everybody. Thank you.
Good afternoon, family. I just want to say I highly appreciate to be given this opportunity and to be able to speak. I want this thing by Pisa. That is our man, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka. Mama wethu Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka is the United Can you hear me, Susie?
No, we lost you there, ma'am. We lost you there.
Okay. Yeah. I was just saying, our mother, Dr. Phumzile Ngcuka, is the United Nations under the Secretary General and Executive Director of UN Women. And she was sworn into office on the 19th August 2013. And in that time, UN Women was a small agency which grew to raise billion US dollars for women of the world, South Africa, and also as a Minister of Minerals and Energy, 1999, also as a Deputy Minister in the Department of Trade and Industry. From 1996 to 1999. Also a member of Parliament from 1994 until 1996. as part of South Africa's first democratic government. Our mother is the founder of Umlambo Foundation, which assists with enhanced performance in poor schools and digital literacy. And she's the trustee of the Mandela Road Foundation. You're welcome, Mama. We're proud of you. Presenting our speaker, Dr. J. Kabilwa from
Mamzo, we keep losing you.
Dr. Jessica Bilwa is a former MP. That is, hello, hello, can you hear me?
No, ma'am, we keep losing you, Mamzo. I'm going to ask Advocate Gumede to take over.
All right, sorry everyone for that. We're having some technical difficulties. I'm going to just pick up, just to do justice to Dr. Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, if you just allow me to start from scratch. So Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka is the United Nations Under Secretary General and Executive Director of the United Nations Women. She was sworn into office on the 19th of August, 2013. And in her time at the UN Women, she managed to grow and raise $40 billion for women and girls of the world. From 2005 to 2008, she served as Deputy President of South Africa. She served as the Minister of Minerals and Energy from 1999 to 2005. And served as well as the Deputy Minister in the Department of Trade and Industry from 1996 to 1999. She was a member of Parliament from 1994 to 1996 as part of South Africa's first democratic government. She's the founder of the Umlambo Foundation, which assists with enhanced performance in poor schools and digital literacy. She's a trustee of the Mandela Rhodes Foundation. Thank you so much, Doctor. It's really amazing to have you here. And next on our list of guests who will be joining us today is Dr. Jessie Kabwila, who reigns from the beautiful land of Malawi. Honorable Dr. Jessie Kabwila is a former MP, chairperson of the Parliamentary Women's Caucus, member of the Education, Science and Technology Committee, president of the African Union's MPs Against Child Marriage, a senior lecturer at the University of Malawi, Chancellor's College. Dr. Kabwila has always said that her biggest skill is taking truth, or rather talking truth, to power. Thank you so much, Doctor. It is an honor to have you in our midst. The next person who I would like to introduce is no stranger to us at all. She's an international icon. Umam Yvonne Chaka Chaka is an internationally acclaimed performing artist, entrepreneur, teacher, and humanitarian. She's also a goodwill ambassador for the United Nations Children's Fund and the Rollback Malaria Partnership. In 2006, she started her foundation called Princess of Africa, a name she received after a 1990 tour in Uganda, which focuses on championing the change in health and education for communities across Africa. Umam Yvonne Chaka Chaka is the brainchild of backing vocalists and session musicians awards. She's the first African female recipient of the World Economic Forum Crystal Award amongst a long list of impressive awards. Ma'am Yvonne Chaka Chaka, if you don't mind me mentioning this, that your husband is actually the person who diagnosed me with asthma, because as a small child, I was very sick and no one knew what to do with me. And your husband is actually the person who diagnosed me and allowed me to live this flourishing life that I'm living now. So thank you so much to you and yours. And then we've got Ma'am Belinda Nobude, who reigns from the wonderful, country of Uganda. And Mrs. Nabude works with Teach for Uganda, and they're currently piloting a digital literacy training program for its staff in a bid to ensure that COVID-19 pandemic does not disrupt teaching efforts. She has a cross-cutting skills in digital technologies, for which she holds a bachelor's degree in computer science and education. Then we have, last but not least, Umamthandazile Ndlovu. Umamthandazile is a mother, an educator, feminist, and LGBTQIA plus community ally, which is so important, really amazing. She completed a BA degree majoring in psychology and anthropology at the University of the Witwatersrand, which is my alma mater. She's got a PGCE in foundation phase education and an honors degree in counseling psychology at UNISA. She's passionate about education with an ever-growing interest in developing reading and thinking skills in children, and is also passionate about fighting for and teaching adults about equality, human rights, gender issues, and sex and sexuality education. Umamthandazile is a mother to the most vibrant 5-year-old girl and believes motherhood has been a huge driver of her passions and aspirations. Thank you so much to all of you wonderful women for joining us today. I don't like talking about myself, so maybe Umam Ribuyile can be the one to say my biography, because I really don't like talking about myself. You can introduce me.
Oh my goodness, Tando, to trust you to put me on the spot. What I'm going to do is actually put it in the chat because it's so long. This is such a well-achieved young lady who's an advocate. She's passionate about an array of things, education, women issues. She's doing great work. I cannot even begin to list all the things that Tando has achieved, continues to achieve, and will achieve. So she's one of the bright sparks in this country. And I think when we were putting this together, I couldn't think of a more well-positioned young Black vibrant woman to really coordinate and what's the word? I'm actually even at a loss of words, but to actually program direct our session today. So this is a young lady that I really urge all of you to look out for, especially when you've got legal issues. So this is really, and Tando is just amazing. And like I say, again, one of the things that at her core is education, especially education of women and the girl child. So thank you, Advocate Tando Gumede. And I'm so pleased and really impressed by all your achievements. Thank you, thank you, and for agreeing to participate in this capacity. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mam Ribuyile. I'm an admitted advocate of the High Court of South Africa. And I'm a global feminist educator and speaker, and I focus mainly on human rights, equity, intersectionality, feminism, and trying to transform schools, communities, industries, sectors to become more equitable, but especially intersectional spaces. I'm also the founder of Mteto Search Engine, which is an internationally award-winning technology that uses artificial intelligence to try and prevent and respond to incidences of school-related gender-based violence, not only in South Africa, but across the globe as well. And so it is with that in mind and understanding that I'm actually here to hold the space, because, the education environment and schooling environment is such an important place for the grooming and the teaching, the educating, the evolution and the growing and the nourishing of young human minds who will then become the adults who are the future leaders of our societies at large. And so, when Mam Ribuyile came to me and asked me to moderate the space, she was so shocked at how quickly I said yes. And I mean, it's just so obvious, because education environments are just so important. And I was shocked to find that the abuse within the education environment is not only one that is levied against children, but is also one that is levied against the people who are responsible for pioneering the educational efforts in that space. And for me, that's really tragic. It's really tragic that we find ourselves in a space where even as a principal, you can be vulnerable to gender stereotypes and toxic social norms. And so that's really what our discussion is going to be about today. And I would like to actually call on our first speaker to, lay the foundation for the conversation that we're going to have today about the challenges that, in particular, women educators have in the education sector. But I also think we need to broaden the conversation just a little bit, especially because we have someone who is an LGBTQIA plus community ally, and I am a member of the queer community. And so I think that this conversation should not only extend to women educators, but we should also be looking at queer educators as well. Earlier on this year, a friend of mine confided in me to say that she was being abused by her fellow colleagues at work. She's a lesbian woman, and her colleagues at work were isolating her, using very violent microaggressions to describe her and her behavior, what she should and shouldn't be doing in the staff room, etc., based on the premise of her sexuality. And that's just absolutely unacceptable. So I look forward for us as powerful women, as leaders in our own rights, to unpack this situation and not only to theorize about what the causes are and what we ought to do, but for us to unite, to collaborate, and to form a formidable plan of action going forward in how we are actually going to deal with this issue on a tangible, grassroots, and even higher level, at a higher level. So please take it away to our first speaker for today to lay the groundwork. Thank you so much.
Tando, can you just introduce Dr. Jessie, please?
Sorry about that. Dr. Jessie, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Sorry about not saying your name. So
No,
as
no,
I
no
mentioned,
problem.
the crisis of the undermining of women and queer educators in the education sector is not something to be taken lightly. And it would really be great to hear from you about the nature of this problem and your own interpretations and how we can move forward from where we are now. Thank you so much.
Okay, if I could just get clarity, because at the program I was to present on confronting patriarchy, but if I'm getting a question you're giving me, it is about the LGBTQ question. So should I get into my presentation, or do I address the question you've just leveled now?
So the question is just a generic question, but I am asking us to push the boundaries because I think queerphobia is also part of the package of patriarchy. So go ahead with your presentation, but please do include the queer community as well. Thank you.
I think I would like to say, let's address so that the conference has flow. You're looking at the queer question. If you don't mind, if you could just rephrase it, that I speak directly to that fumble around. I see the many of us here, so I want to speak the actual question, and then we can move on. And maybe when my time to do the presentation after that comes, I'll deal with it. So if you don't mind, you asked us a particular question on the LGBTQ, and I've published in this area, and I'm an activist in that area. So I will be able to give not only a Malawi perspective, but a regional one, given my background as the former chair for SADC, who was also a committee to deal with reproductive health rights. If you could just the actual question, I'll speak to that.
You can go ahead, doctor. You can go ahead.
Hello? Yeah. No, no, sorry. I think because listening to you with divided into whether doing presentation or not, just want to quickly, I would just want to request you to quickly rephrase the question. Just state the question, then I'll answer it. Please.
Okay.
Just to
So
refresh my mind. Yeah.
no worries, doctor. So insofar as there are issues of abuse of women and queer educators, what are some of the factors, leading up to that? And also, how do you practically or tangibly see us moving forward to having an environment, an education environment where we don't have women and queer people being abused?
Okay. I think for me, the first front of oppression in this area is in the curricula. I think the curricula that is taught in most education institutions is very patriarchal. It has the double patriarchy, the one of indigenous, the one in our own culture, the one that has been brought in by the colonials, which is found in religion, what I would call systems of logic, systems of identity. So it's almost like garbage in, garbage out. When the curriculum teaches misogyny, it teaches heteronormativity, and it says being different sexually is wrong, you are not going to get teacher training colleges that actually are welcoming of diverse sexuality and do not look at LGBTIQ people as people who've got horns growing through their heads and are not as subhuman or not human beings. So for me, I think it comes from what we are teaching in class. We are teaching a lot of Christian right dogma, right? Which is actually taught as, just look at the SADC region. How many countries are proudly saying we're a Christian country, we're a Christian country, when what they actually mean is we are sexist. We believe in men being superior to women. We believe in gay people being not, outside the national, which is what, if you look at the Victorian diet, what we call knowledge. In other words, I feel knowledge production systems need to be decolonized, depatriarchalized, and we need to understand that what we are calling Africa is to a large extent what we call South Africa, Malawi, whatever, is to an extent what the white boys told us is what Malawi is, and whenever anybody different stands up to speak, we remind them that, no, you are abnormal, right? So I think hegemonic discourses have taken over what we call organized education, organized knowledge, organized religion, of what is identity, right? So I think the first and foremost, we need to change, depatriarchalize what we call knowledge, what we call teaching, how we are training our teachers, what we call a man, what we call a reconstruction of these categories that we call human beings, even what we call sex, the whole issue of gender and the fact that it's social construction. So I would look at where we need to actively check. Then the other problem we have is just the globality of capitalism. Capitalism is very much built on stationary definitions of gender. I always say, if you look at the Olympics, they don't know what to do with people who are in text. Why? Because people don't sell, not because it doesn't exist, but not sell any adverts if they were to say, oh, we're going to have 100 meters of LGBTIQ people. And actually, we can't name this a men's race because there are also, men is something that is a fluid, it's not fixed, capitalism or marketing does not go well with things that are fluid and that are not static and that aren't bond sold. Okay, so in my opinion, the global of capitalism, the quality of neoliberalism is just serious problem. It's much easier to be capitalist. Then you can also say all men stand this side, all women stand that side. Go buy swimming suits, go buy uniforms. Then the industries start kicking in. Right now, I'm talking to you during the SADC summit. Nobody wants to talk about LGBTIQ because one, they all tell you about, oh, it would not sell. It would not get votes. Yeah, but there are many things that they do that don't get votes. People are busy being corrupt. I think right now we've seen South Africa in turmoil over the Zuma issue. Right now in Malawi, we have our own headaches going on. As I'm coming here, I'm coming from a march of a minister just having been arrested on so-called corruption issues. But you know, what I'm trying to say is the politics we are, you know, politics is what funds what education does. Educational policy, politics, all have to fit into the politics. Now, if you look at political parties, how many have made LGBTIQ a real issue, a political question? Search me. So even if they fought in the struggle, they are now told, look, let's deal with the real issues. We'll deal with yours next. So I would say, if I talk about the curriculum, if I talk about the fact of political parties, I believe the feminist movement needs to take on political parties again, that we went into the liberation to remove white people. But for some reason, it looks like you've just commodified our bodies into fighting for this struggle. But when we've come back and we've said, well, the person who removed that white colonial is actually transgender. What are we going to do about that? You know, when we are going to vote, nobody says we don't want transgenders to vote. We don't want gay people to vote. We don't want whatever to vote. No, people say, let's all go and vote. When we are there, there is no there is no discrimination against sexuality. There's no discrimination about women. We are all of us become nationals. But when it comes to getting resources on the table, when it comes to getting positions, now you are told, look, we have a problem with affirmative action because affirmative action is not very fair. You're like, really? But why is patriarchy something that is acceptable? Yeah. So to me, another thing that we really need to look at is history. History itself, as the fact that it is missing her story. Today we've met here to celebrate the women who marched in South Africa. I am coming here in a government of Tonse government that actually included women marching, and my presentation will be looking at that. They marched and they fought and we were arrested. I myself was locked up. But when it came to, let us put women in boards, they only came up, they couldn't fit the law. Nobody has gone into the streets to say the government has broken the law because it didn't put women, it didn't put gay people, it didn't put LGBTQ, or there are so many defilements. Nobody's demonstrating on that. So I think we need to understand that until crimes against women become a political question, which is what we call feminism, right? Become a political question, then it's not yet Uhuru. We are not yet free. We are still being used to construct neocolonial states of men, not neocolonial states that include women or include transgendered people or those who are different from the public, you know. Yeah, I think because of time, when we are in panels like this, I know that we tend to run away with it. And with this COVID, we need to visualize being a home and talk yourself throughout. You're going to bore people stiff, especially when they're having to put up with listening to you on a gadget. So I think let me stop there. And but before I do, as I got a chance, I still wanted to add in my praise for Phumzile Mlambo to say, for me, I think her legacy is I've never seen a UN body give as much clarity to feminist principles as during her time. And I think that needs to be underlined, right? UN is one frustrating body to work with for a feminist. I mean, they drive you crazy because they've got this liberal talk that just drives some of us who are left, which she was there. I would say if I were how it has been, taking a breath of fresh air, at least I could go into a UN meeting and talk feminism, and not only talk feminism, but budget for it. Gender responsive budgeting has come back into the main space. The issue of family action has come back there. So I think for me, I will always sing her praises for not only being an African community, but making sure that she institutionalizes what we stand for, and the fact we were not feminists by white people. we are feminists because feminism is a human right, and human rights are inalienable. Nobody teaches you how to stand up for who you are. And a good example are the women who marched. So earlier on, they stood up for who they are and said, we are not going to be forced into the past. So I think it's very good that Umlambo has hosted this, because I think the founder of Umlambo is a very definition of that march, in the sense that she has got the UN. One of them is where the neo capitalists, they are standing in the name of democracy and free rights and all that, but she has widened this for the so-called crazy feminists, angry feminists like some of us, to actually stand here and talk and not be apologetic for what we stand for. Thank you very much.
Dr. Kabila, thank you so much for your contribution. There's so many things that stood out in what you said, but I just want to highlight a few. You spoke about erasure and how her story is missing. And I can attest to this because last year I was doing some research and looking for writings by Black women about their experiences in apartheid. And I couldn't find much. There was so little. And all they did was to push women to the periphery to say, oh, there were also, women activists, as though we were secondary. And I think we all have been hiding or be secretive about the fact that, quite frankly, Mam Winnie is the mother of our democracy. She was outside, she fought, she continued to fight while other people were either in exile or were in prison. But we want to erase that. And by the time she left us, unfortunately, we had done an absolute disgrace to the memory and the legacy of her work. And she was only aggressive because the system was just as aggressive. And so she retaliated with the same amount of violence and with the same amount of, I don't even think you can say it was the same. It was probably a drop in the ocean of the amount of violence and aggression that she herself and people like her had been subjected to. And that's really important. Last week, we had a session with an organization. Please listen to this, Dr. Jason. With an organization that refused to acknowledge also racialized forms of gender-based violence. And I think it's important for us to mention that in this context, because the Umlambo Foundation is working with poor schools. And we know that poverty is very well, because of the colonial ramifications, very well aligned or close to Blackness and Black African identity. And so when we're talking about gender-based violence, particularly in under-resourced schools, for example, what we're really speaking about are Black women and Black queer people, or women of color and queer people of color. That's the truth. And we don't want to acknowledge that there is a racialized element of gender-based violence that is very unique to anyone else, that a white woman just wouldn't be able to understand. And when there's an opportunity for us to bring that up, like what happened to me last week, I was kicked out of the session. I was supposed to be a guest speaker, and I was kicked out of the session because I brought out misogynoir. And I think it's really amazing that you speak about, the erasure and how important that is, and how erasure is in and of itself a form of gender-based violence. We seem to not even understand what violence looks like and what it encompasses. And it's important for us to know what it encompasses, because if we don't understand what it encompasses, then there's no way for us to even begin to do the work that needs to be done. And I think that is possibly, as you mentioned, a neo-colonial strategy which is executed by patriarchs to make sure that we don't progress in the feminist agenda of emancipating all human beings regardless of their superficial identity. Thank you so much for that contribution, Doctor, and I'm definitely going to come back to you later to speak on some of the elements that you had in your presentation. So can we then move on to Mam Yvonne Chaka Chaka?
Thank you, Tando, and thank you and hello to everyone who's organized this session. I think this session is something I didn't bargain for, but it is just so interesting to know that you've got great activists like Jessie there. My topic is about remembering our responsibility against all odds, you know, to the education of an African child. What is education in this 21st century? We may ask ourselves, but we do know that education becomes something that is very, very important, you know, and a great investment that deserves backing from big businesses, from international organizations, and from anyone who really cares, you know, to build a future for our children. For me, I think it's important that we all know that okay. Can we have people muting if they're not on the podium, please? Thanks.
Yes, ma'am, we've muted him. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think for me, education primarily starts, in actual fact, at home. Once we start teaching our children at home what needs to be done becomes very important. Our children should know few things that will make them better people, like respect, caring, sharing, containing one's emotions. And I think time management becomes something that is very important, and many other things that will equip them to be better people. In South Africa, not only in South Africa, but in other regions, we know that children walk miles to go to school. Some children have to wake up early in the morning and to prepare to go to school. Now, can you imagine, by the time they reach school, they're tired. And what happens? They're so demoralized. But I want to urge the teachers and the governments who've made sure that there's school feeding at school. You know, it goes a very long way because some of these children don't even have food. Then this brings me to something that is very, very important, a teacher. Now, a teacher has to become an educator, a mother to this child, or a father, or just a parent, a police sometimes, and a psychologist. Because can you imagine, some of these children come from headed homes. They are 18, or some of them are much younger, and they have to be looking after their siblings. So our teachers have to have that stature of knowing how to deal with these children who come from child-headed homes, which is something that other people maybe don't even look at it. So I want to say to our governments, our teachers work with very little, but doing a lot. How do we make sure that our teachers are equipped to do all the things that they're doing? Obviously, we always then say to our teachers, they have to be able to look at these children and treat them with respect as well, with lawfulness. They must be patient, and they have to be doing all these things under these stringent conditions, or sometimes conditions that are not very good. But our teachers are not given the respect that they deserve by the very same children. How do we make sure that the children do respect our teachers when we say to our teachers they have to reciprocate? So everything should start at home. We know that this 1976 education was to frustrate our students, but our students really fought. And today we talk about decolonizing education. We talk about transforming education. But what is education in the 21st century? Is it forgetting where we come from and forgetting our past and go with the new one? I have no idea. You who are in better positions will have to answer that question. We know that this whole thing of time is a myth, really, that Africans do not know time. Where was time invented? Time was invented in the ancient Egypt, and that is a fact. Where were books made possible for people to read? The Sankara Quarter in the northeastern Timbuktu became the dwellings and the place of the scholars and teachers. And I'm very happy to say, yes, I am an African. This became the very first place where libraries were created. And people will always say, Black people do not read. That is not true. I know that we constantly want our teachers to abide by the law, but do they get the support that they deserve from the powers that be, from the district, from governments, from the SGBs? So when we want to make sure that our teachers are able to impart their knowledge, we need to make sure that the playing field is leveled for them. We talk about COVID now. Is the environment conducive for our teachers and our children? It is absolutely not. Our teachers are frustrated. Our teachers are going through so much, including the children. Can you imagine if a child is used to going to school Monday to Friday, and all of a sudden, because of COVID, they go to school 3 times a week or twice a week? That's why we have such a high number of children dropping out of school. But our teachers are constantly having to bear the brunt of that. But I'm grateful to organizations like this who always empower our teachers, because for our teachers to be able to do everything that they are doing, they need to be empowered and they need to be supported. I'm really, really happy that the Umlambo Foundation is doing what they are doing, and all the other teachers who make do with absolutely nothing. We talk about education. People, when they're empowered, people, when they are educated, they're able not to be at anyone's mercy. So it's people like you and I who have to make sure that our children are fully empowered so that they don't sit there and idle. Because once an idle mind stands there, they've got absolutely nothing to do, but they will go out there and disrupt. But I want to really salute the teachers who've come before us and those who work tirelessly to impart their knowledge to us and really impact us positively. And I also want to encourage our teachers, the ones who are working now with very little, to continue to do the good work and make sure that our children are empowered and are able to complete and compete with the best and the rest of the world against all odds. A learning nation is a better nation, and a nation that is empowered becomes better. So let us make sure that when we teach our children, we don't forget our history. We need to start writing our own books and our own stories, because if we don't, other people will write our stories and we will be compromised. I want to really advocate for our teachers to earn decent salaries, because they are the ones that make these foundations. Today, we've got presidents, we've got advocates like Tando, but where do they come from? It's from those teachers who have sleepless nights to build us and to make sure that we've got the great and the solid foundation. So if I have to do anything, really, if I have to march to the UN or anywhere, I would say to the governments, let's pay teachers good salaries, because they make kings, they make advocates, they make doctors and everybody. So if we look well after our teachers, we will not have education that is compromised. And we should be able to say, these are the people who make us who we are. So I'm happy to be part of this. And as Jessie said, it's people like you and I who have to stand out there and say, God loves us all. It doesn't matter who you are. God doesn't have any stepchildren. Whether you're straight or what is called not straight, we are all God's children. And once we are empowered and educated to know and respect each other, we would make this world a better place. With that said, I just want to say thank you to Ribo and everyone who's put this webinar together. We need to know what is education, what is perceived to be education, and what do we want our children to learn. Let's start writing our own stories. I believe in Black excellence. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Yvonne. Actually, I think that your opener of what is education is very powerful. It's a very powerful question to ask, because I'm currently doing my master's in law in the education space. And there is no definition for basic education in South Africa. So we then have to look at international instruments just so we can find out what is basic education. And it's important for us to just start from the ground level, from the foundations, for us to be the ones to pioneer what certain things are and what the expectation is, instead of waiting for people from outside to be the ones to kind of impose that onto us. So thank you so much for that. And I think also another thing is maybe we need to look at schools as being centers of intervention for healing, because you mentioned, children being disrespectful, but I think that that comes from being raised in a broken home. And these children are raised in broken homes because our society is broken and completely unhealed. South Africa, quite frankly, has to undergo a gargantuan, even Africa, all colonized places of the world have to undergo a gargantuan healing process, which includes forgiveness, it includes accountability and responsibility, etc. But thank you so much for your wonderful insights, Ma'am Yvonne. And I'm hoping that we can even interrogate further what you've said when we go into the question and answer round. At this point, I then would like to call upon Ma'am Belinda Nobude.
Yes. Good afternoon to all the panelists and the audience, everyone in the audience. I am really privileged to join such an illustrious group of panelists to share something that is really close to my heart. I'm Nabude Belinda from Uganda. I work with an organization called Teach for Uganda. Teach for Uganda aims at achieving academic excellence through a holistic teaching. This is where we believe that education is the key to every challenge we have, where we shall be able to continue the cycle of renewing our society, healing our society from the abject poverty we have. I'm attached to a rural school. We actually work in the poorest of the countries. I'm attached to a rural school called Kasiso in Luwero district. That is 60 kilometers north of our capital, Kampala. For those who don't know much about Uganda, Luwero district was the epicenter of a 5-year war that saw our current president, Yoweri Museveni, into power. So the effects of war are still going on in this community. There is abject poverty, little opportunity for education, a sense of hopelessness, and the medical facilities are really doing badly. So these are all manifested in the area I work in. I'm passionate about education. When I went to my duty station to work for the first time, I was full of hope, full of enthusiasm to teach. But on my arrival to the area, I would love to show you what I saw just from arriving the very first day. I ask to be able to share my screen.
Yes, Belinda, you may go ahead and share.
Okay.
I'm just going to give you co-hosting rights, and you can do that.
Okay, thank you.
It should work around now. Let's see.
Yes, it is. It is. On my very first day of arrival, this is the building I first saw. This is the building that is supposed to house primary 1 and primary 2, the classes I'm supposed to teach. And this is the condition. Ironically, it has a saying UPE, which is Universal Primary Education. Our government claims to give us free education, is our hope. But this is the hope that UPE has given pupils in the rural areas. Moving on, that is one of the latrines that was made for the disabled children. But as you see, there is no door, no privacy, but that is a latrine. That is primary 5 and primary 6. As you can see, the building is, the foundation is eroded due to the soil erosion. There's a lot of climate change effects going on in this area. So as you can see, this building is entirely exposed. As I went on in the communities, I noticed that there were so many challenges going on in the community, the poor infrastructure, the poor nutrition. Like I've listed, it was a group of so many things. But the ones I really want to talk about then, I was overwhelmed with it, but the ones I want to talk about today is the early marriages. When we went into the community, when I wanted to support the P7, primary 7 and primary 6 teachers, I noticed the number of girls had gone down in class, and it was attributed to early marriages and child prostitution. These girls were moving to Luwero town, which is just 2 kilometers away from Kasiso primary school, and the community is also called Kasiso. So they moved to those urban areas to either get married as early as 14 or do prostitution. The sad bit about it is that even if they want to turn back and start all over in life, the community rejects them. There were so many challenges here and there. There was poor sanitation. Later in the evening, when I was showed to my teacher's quarters, we actually didn't have a washroom. We didn't have a latrine, not even a latrine. We had to share with the church. Teachers, female teachers, both male and female, had to share a latrine with the church. And that was really a shock. So you could imagine what would really happen on Sunday. In case a teacher fell sick, which happened when I was there, the very first week I was there, I was trying to cover his lessons when I went into class. I noticed that there was no health cover for them. And all the health centers that the government of Uganda claims to have given us didn't have medicine. So we had to fundraise for the teacher to get some medicine. Another serious challenge that was there was female teacher attrition. These teachers were being harassed by the male counterparts, fighting for everything that was there. Given that the teachers in Uganda are really underpaid, these teachers go on to do subsistence farming to support their households. But the men were taking all the land that is given by the church so that teachers can be able to feed themselves. Girls were dropping out, the girls either due to early marriages, prostitution, but there were girls who were even dropping out because they'd missed 1.5 years of school. They felt their bodies had developed, so they didn't really fit in class. And their male counterparts came back to school to see P7 and P6 when they eased down on the first lockdown. But these girls refused to come back to school because they felt it wasn't really something for them. The other challenge that we got was teachers were not vaccinated against COVID. We worked in fear. The government put out a project where all teachers and essential workers in Uganda were supposed to be immunized. When it came to my school, a group of only 4 teachers were immunized, and they told us the vaccines were finished. And to date, even the first teachers who were immunized have not got a second vaccine. I'm still waiting to get my first dose. So that was another challenge, working within that time to try and help children get an excellent education. The other challenge we had was child labor. Me and my colleague had to reach school and notice some of our pupils were in the gardens working. People have taken their children either to the gardens. Some of the girls, especially the girls, have been taken to Kampala to work as domestic workers to aid the family because the poverty levels are so high. This really demotivated teachers. The numbers were really so low compared to before the COVID pandemic. We had so many teenage pregnancies coming on board, gender-based violence. My first service at Kasiso Church of Uganda, the Reverend was talking about a gentleman who we had to go and bury. He had committed suicide after burning his wife up with 3rd-degree and 2nd-degree burns. It was really a pitiful story, but he later committed suicide. So we had to go as a community and bury our community member, but it was a sad story. These children were left without a father and were left with the responsibility of looking after a sick mother in a situation where the health facilities are down, they're depleted. The biggest challenge I saw about our system, our education system, immediately I arrived, when I entered the class and I was given the teaching plan, I noticed there was a problem with the way we were imparting knowledge to the children. There was a lot of rote learning. Rote learning is where you expect children to learn by memorizing. You teach, you write on the blackboard, they copy, they say, you say, they memorize. It's a very bad way of learning because you don't get to understand how to apply all the knowledge you've been given. It is something that us at Teach for Uganda don't agree with. There was a lot of sexual abuse due to the long distances to school. Long distances alone, like Miss Yvonne Chakachaka said, are a problem. But here in Kasiso, there is a problem of long distance plus sexual abuse. In between walking a 7-kilometer journey to school, you are attacked, or you leave school in the evening late, you are attacked. So those are all challenges. Then I noticed sometimes the girls would miss school. They didn't have sanitary pads. They didn't know how to handle minor sanitary pads. No one has told them there is this alternative, you can do this and survive. That is a newspaper story. This story was written in 2020, just a year ago, by the Daily Monitor. Daily Monitor is one of the biggest newspapers we have in Uganda, and ethical at that. It wrote that at least 1,400 pregnant teenagers were registered at Luwero Hospital in that year, 2020. This was 2020. Luwero Hospital is just 2 kilometers from Kasiso, meaning some of my pupils from Kasiso Primary School were pregnant because this is the biggest hospital they can access. And these are the girls who have been allowed to go for antenatal. These are the girls who have managed to say, oh, I'm pregnant. The girls who have gone for unsafe abortions, the girls who have been locked in the houses because the parents are ashamed of them, the girls who have just run away from the community because of shame. There was a story when I just arrived at Kasiso in the trading center at Kasana. Kasana is near Kasiso, where a 14-year-old got pregnant and was chased by her parents. It is really a touching story. She tried to go to the boyfriend who was equally a minor, and the boyfriend plus the mother chased her as well. So she stood at the center and tried to throw herself in front of a bus. And people came to her rescue and rushed her to Luwero Hospital, which is just within there. It really touched me that it has gone to a level where no one wants to take responsibility for what is happening. No one wants to help. I believe all this has been attributed to that level of poverty. No one wants to take responsibility because they don't have anything to give. They don't have. The challenge is the poverty cycle. Now, if we want to end this poverty cycle, it is something that we need to attack from the heart of it. We have had a crappy education that cannot help us outside of the professions made for us by the colonialists. What if we change this poor education into an excellent education? What can change? Can we reverse the cycle? Can we do away with poverty? This is a generational curve. Right now, the challenges we have may not go away, but if we teach the generation that is currently in school, 10 years from now, things will be a little different. At Teach for Uganda, we believe that a holistic education is the solution to this problem. According to Teach for Uganda, 70% of the people that enroll for primary school in Uganda drop out before completion of primary school. 70, that's a large number. That means of the Ugandan population, only 30% go above the primary schools. 65 can't read, 65 of the primary 3 to primary 7 pupils can't read and understand primary 2 English, sorry. So even if they get out of the system and manage to go through up to primary 7, their education is not competent. If in the rural areas, they can't compete, they are disadvantaged that way. According to Madam Charlotte Iraguha, our managing director at Teach for Uganda, an excellent education is where you teach the mind, the heart, and the hands. So that is what we aim to do. We aim to go away from the colonial definition of education to an education where we can practice touch hearts, touch hands, feed the mind, grow the brain. So sorry about that. In one of the TED Talks by Steve Hughes, Steve Hughes is a neuropediatric psychologist. He delivered a TED Talk where he said, you cannot make it in life with good grades. Something that we are striving to do in Uganda right now, I don't know about other countries, but in Uganda right now, all people care about is good grades. But we cannot make it in life using good grades. We can make it in life when we have a well-developed brain. So how do we help our children get a well-developed brain? That is something we have been striving to do at Teach for Uganda through different methods. I would want to show you one of our classes. This is my colleague Charlotte trying to help these children. This is a science class. This is how we ought to learn. This is how we learned in the olden days. This is a science class teaching about roots. As you can see, she has some roots in the hands and she's teaching children, not from the blackboard and seeing images in a book, but from the garden. And given that we have limited resources, this is the richest education in the poorest of the country. This is one of a learning aid made by one of our colleagues at Teach Uganda, Shamsa. This is a teaching aid that helps children learn how to spell by themselves, blend sounds, and make words, be able to read by themselves. It is fun, it is interesting, it's innovative, it's interactive. So children spend a lot of time on this. Of recent, we have, sorry about that. We have started digital learning in 3 schools out of the 33 due to, we haven't really got equipment to try and widen it. We are in 33 schools in Uganda, but we have only digital devices for 3 schools. This has been able to help the children learn in a way that develops their brain further. We are trying to get away from an education where children are just fed by the teacher, but children interact with the environments by themselves. If you want to develop the brain, you learn from experiences. You don't learn by just receiving knowledge and memorizing it. So these children are able to interact through their tabs, through different environments, and tracking their progress is so easy through digital learning. It has really been empowering. As a result, the enrollment of students has really gone up. And the good thing about it is we can still do it in the second COVID lockdown. We have just ended one COVID. We haven't really ended down, they eased up on it, but still we are not allowed to teach. So these children are able to learn using digital devices, social distancing, and other sorts. We cannot really go back to the old teaching style because of COVID-19. We have not been fully vaccinated. I was wondering, why should we really care? This is why, personally, I care. This is why these girls are the youngest of my class, the ones I got to learn during COVID-19 in small clusters. These girls, when I look at them, I see my next doctor, I see the next lawyer, I see the next, sorry, I see the next politician, the people who will influence our country tomorrow. As we are growing old, these are the people going to take over the country. These are the people going to take over Africa. These are the people going to take over the world. If we want a better tomorrow, we start here. That's what I believe. I want to end by saying a quote by Ezra. You are free to choose you are free to choose, but you are not free to choose the consequences of your decision. So as teachers, I believe we are the front line of the battle to change the kind of condition we live in Africa. As teachers, if there are teachers in this audience right now, we are the change we need. Education is the key, as Lucky Dube said in one of his songs. It doesn't become better than that. It's our best shot at doing a good thing. Ending by saying, the ball is in your hands. Our leaders within this group, politicians, non-profits, please support education. This is a battle I have chosen, and I'm imploring everyone to join us to change our world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Belinda. That was a very elaborate presentation and actually deeply moving. There were a number of elements in your presentation that actually remind me of the South African context and the lack of political will, in transforming infrastructures in schools, as well as some of, the attitudes and behaviors within the schooling environment or educational system. I actually want to ask you a question, or actually you did kind of answer the question, but perhaps, what we can do is to further leverage on the internet infrastructure, though it is limited, that you have to get international education for your students. So for example, getting people who can teach English who are from the UK, for example, and that can be provided on a free basis. And perhaps those are things that you might consider. And those interactive educational tools that you showed us,
Yes.
Would you be willing to have organizations from all around the world to provide you with those types of interactive educational tools? So essentially what I'm trying to say is leveraging on the digital community that is already pre-existing to be able to support your needs without necessarily having to overexert, because the educational crisis that we see is something that is actually happening not only in Uganda, but around the world. So if maybe you'd be willing to consider leveraging on the limited digital infrastructure to bring more education to your environment, and then also other organizations bringing tools in to enhance education. I wonder if you'd perhaps consider that, because clearly there's a lack of political will. I also was caught by something that you mentioned that I think is very important for our conversation going forward. And the whole idea of intersectionality is, you mentioned, disabled students and them not having accessibility to be able to use water and sanitation or the loo, essentially, in the schooling environment. And that's something that we don't talk about, that it's not enough for us to be building spaces that accommodate able-bodied people as a secondary thought. And that as we build our infrastructures, and that as we develop in the schooling system as well, we need to be considerate of the fact that we exist on a spectrum of being, and that people are differently abled, and we're not, abled in the same way. And that when we build our spaces, we need to have that in mind and to be respectful of that. Ma'am Belinda, do you want to respond?
Yes, I want to. About the willingness to leverage with other people, that is a very welcome suggestion. I'm going to share a link through the chat for the Teach for Uganda website.
Awesome.
We are, if you check the website, there's a part that says partner with us.
Okay.
Please, if you're willing to help have the journey with us, walk the journey with us into bringing excellent education to the children in Uganda and other organizations. Teach for Uganda is a part of a global network. So we are willing to have all the help it can get. It's a battle. We are willing to take it on with other people.
Thank you so much.
It's okay.
Yes. Are you fine?
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, okay, thank you very much. All right, so we're gonna then move on to our last speaker of the day, who is Ma'am Thandazile Ndlovu. Please, the platform is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope everybody can hear me clearly. I'd just like to say good afternoon to all in attendance. As mentioned, my name is Thandazile Ndlovu. I'm super thankful for this opportunity and excited to be in a space filled with like-minded individuals. I think it's even more special that so many of these individuals, more so on the panel, are inspiring women, and I hope I give the stage the respect it deserves. As more motivation, my boss is actually in this discussion, so I definitely have to represent well, because going back to work might be awkward afterwards if I don't. So when I first read my topic, re-engineering our education against all odds to empower the 21st century learner, I thought, great, how exciting, how relevant to the times. So obviously I did what most people do before a big speech. I did some research. And first, I wanted to make sure that I understood the topic. So I looked up the word re-engineering, which means to redesign or restructure. And because I like to focus on the positive as much as I can, I decided to research the meaning of empower and what a 21st century learner is before tackling the odds we'd need to face. And to empower is to give someone the power or authority to do something. And when I started searching what a 21st century learner is, I didn't find the results I expected. I thought I was going to find definitions and characteristics of what a 21st century student is, but instead I was welcomed by information on where and how education should be moving, the skills the 21st century learner need, and how teachers can help develop these skills. So I decided to start using my own personal experience and observation from the learners I have and I do teach, as well as living with my 15-year-old sister and 5-year-old daughter. And trust me, this has taught me more than anything else possibly could. The students of today like to question things. They need reasons. They will not just accept because I said so. And that's just how it is as a valid answer or reason. They are aware of social ills. They know about racism, homophobia, sexism, so much so that they understand microaggressions. Personally speaking, there's many microaggressions I experienced in my schooling career that I only understand now. My 15-year-old sister, for example, already understand that they are what we call woke. They're very aware of their rights. The knowledge can be shaky when it comes to their responsibility, but make no mistake, they know their rights. The learners of today are tech savvy. They can quickly find their way around most devices. They can code and they can learn almost any and everything from YouTube and TikTok. My 15-year-old sister has been learning about practical ways to save and invest from Nicolette Mashile's YouTube page. But then I think to myself, considering we live in a country with such high poverty levels and poor saving habits, why is she not learning this in school? She has learned about countries and cultures around the world, their people, their history, their beliefs and practices from TikTok. My 5-year-old learned how to speak English from watching Peppa Pig when she was 2, and how to calm down when her feelings of anger get overwhelming from Cocomelon on YouTube. When our learners have constant access to videos that make information more palatable and easy to understand, how do we stay relevant? Do we make TikTok dances part of our teaching, or do we include clips from YouTube as part of our prep? My research showed me that the world of education is moving towards a focus on developing critical thinking skills and creativity in learners. Education around the world is moving towards learners and teachers collaborating, and as well as a focus on moving towards learners having a say and a choice in what they learn, because active learners are said to be more consistent and responsible, and they retain the information they acquire. Because it's all good and well for us to be teaching something, but it's even more important that our learners are retaining what we are teaching them. The big focus also and move is because these skills are seen as the skills that our children will need in order to thrive in the working force in the 21st century. The world is becoming smaller because technology allows us access to people and parts of the world we never had access to before. Education is moving away from just focusing on academic development in learners, but also on the holistic development of learners. We need to develop the intellectual, mental, social, physical, and emotional abilities in all our learners. The world no longer needs or wants people who can just regurgitate facts. They need people who can analyze and think of new ideas, people who are technically savvy and are aware of what is happening around the world, people who are socially aware and sensitive to the context of the world and the people who live in it. But then I asked myself, what does all of this mean for the educator, for the school system, for the curriculum? It means we need to change how and what we teach. How is it possible that almost everything in the world is changing, but not our teaching styles and content? During a recent training, I learned that one of the reasons shows like Paw Patrol are so successful is because of how quickly the images change. If you watch an episode of Paw Patrol, it takes about 5 seconds before they show you the next thing. So us showing and saying the same thing repeatedly does not keep our children invested or interested. So if that's the case, is our approach of standing in front of them, constantly asking them to be quiet while we lecture style teach really going to reap the rewards we're hoping for? Research is also consistently showing the importance of taking into consideration different needs, abilities, and personalities of learners, and that the one-size-fits-all approach is not effective. We need to find ways to adapt our content so that it caters to every child and meets them at their point of need. However, it's all good and well to talk about what teachers should and could be doing, and I'm sure we've all heard it all the time, how we should set up our classes, ways to discipline, how to invoke parent involvement, and ways to deal with a variety of learning abilities. I personally have had the pleasure of teaching in both private and government schools, and this has allowed me to take into consideration a number of contextual factors. I can sit here and say use technology, differentiation, and personalized teaching, but I'd be lying if I said I did not know what a mammoth task that is when you are sitting in a class of 40 or more children and a lack of resources. After doing all this research, learning how education needs to and is changing, and finding out that there seems to be schools emerging that focus solely on being 21st century schools, I asked myself, are our teachers equipped to be 21st century teachers? I believe it is important and fair to equip teachers with the tools they need to implement the change we want to see. Earlier, I spoke about the fact that we need to be working on developing our learners holistically, and I just want to look at what it is and would entail for both learners and teachers. My neighbors are doing renovations. Sorry, it's a bit loud. So if we're looking at intellectual development, we need to develop our children's abilities to learn from information and their experience, to development abstract thinking skills, to develop comprehension abilities, logical and analytical thinking abilities, creative thinking abilities, and problem-solving abilities. So I'm sure you've noticed from all of these things that I've mentioned, these skills involve developing various types of thinking skills. A skill is something that you can learn and develop. So then in order for us to be able to teach these skills, we as teachers need to develop them ourselves. And we need to learn then how to teach them to our children. But are we all as teachers fully equipped with the thinking skills, concepts, and teachings? Physical capability. We need to be developing gross motor skills and fine motor skills. And as teachers, I know we help develop these through a variety of activities inside and outside the classroom. And we are even able to notice when there's an issue in a child's development and when there's a need for referral. But what happens when a teacher suspects a need for a referral, but there's no occupational therapist on site to double check her findings? Or the teacher is sure that there's a need for referral, but the parents can't afford to have an assessment done or to commit to occupational therapy lessons if they are needed. How many excellent sportsmen and women are slipping through the cracks of the school system because there's lack of exposure to various sports or cultural activities? Some learners try a sport they're naturally good at for the first time at varsity level, or sadly, they're never given the opportunity to try it. I feel this is an injustice and an area that has so much potential for development and growth. Emotional ability. Our children need to be learning intrapersonal skills, interpersonal skills, skills to self-regulate, and a development of empathy. But are these things we consider during the school day? When our learners are faced with conflict, do we just fix it for them because it's easier and it's quicker? Do we all as teachers know how to adequately deal with our own emotions and in turn the emotions of our learners? How often have we heard or seen teachers reacting inappropriately to a situation in the classroom? Are we providing the teachers with the emotional skills they need to firstly appropriately handle their own emotions, and secondly, teach their learners to deal with theirs? Social skills. We need to be teaching our children social competencies and social awareness. Now, this one area is something that is nearest to my heart because we live in a world that is completely filled with social issues and ills. We've heard a number of them just in this meeting alone. But we as teachers need to be aware of what they are, what they mean, and why they happen. We then need to be able to objectively discuss these issues with our learners. Learners come from homes with a variety of beliefs and values, and as teachers, so do we. So then how do we fairly and honestly discuss issues such as race, the economy, and sexuality? Are we equipped with the correct terminology to tackle these issues? What happens when there's an argument amongst our learners about race, or a learner is tackling issues around their sexuality? We in South Africa live in the rape capital of the world. Are we equipped to talk to a learner who has questions about or has been raped? How often do we advise learners to speak to an elder they trust and will even say, an example is your teacher when they're faced with pressing and sensitive issues? But are those teachers ready, willing, and most importantly, able to deal with those issues? I remember in my first year of psychology, my first ever lecture, the lecturer whose name was Enid said to us, bad psychology is worse than no psychology. So as a teacher, we are in a position to change lives and mold minds, which also means we are capable of immense damage if we do not use our power appropriately. I believe it is immeasurably important for learners to become holistically developed beings. And I therefore believe it is just as, if not more important, for teachers to become holistically developed beings. I believe there should be continuous training on how to educate learners in the changing times and how to incorporate technology practically into our everyday teaching. I read an article about how as teachers, we have made learners' devices the enemy of learning instead of part and parcel of their learning. They're on their phones half their lives. Why aren't we using this to our and their benefit? We should be learning about what is happening in the world. Are we all aware about what's happening in Palestine, the slave trade in Libya? Do we all even know what the acronym LGBTQ+ stands for? Have we all dealt with our own childhood traumas? What about our own questions about our sexuality? I don't think it's fair to expect teachers to do a 4-year degree and have that carry them through a 30+ year of their career. I also think it's unfair that in an ever-changing world, the content taught in schools is not reflective of these changes. A person spends a minimum of 13 years, including grade R, in school. Surely when you walk out of that, you should be adequately prepared for the real world. Can we comfortably and confidently say that the South African curriculum specifically prepares our learners for varsity and beyond? We live in a country where some learners do not have a desk and a chair. What are the chances that that child has a pencil grip if they need it? Are the policies in our schools reflective of the population of the schools? Do our hair policies allow for the differences in hair textures? What about our uniform policies? Do they consider gender identification and presentation of our learners? I spoke about technology earlier, and technology plays a huge role in the lives of our learners, And as I'm sure we are all aware, there's an increasing amount of resources for teachers to use to enhance and improve teaching and learning. Technology allows learning to continue outside the classroom, as well as allows us to travel to places without leaving our seats. But technology can also be dangerous and daunting. Are we all equipped to use it while being aware of what our learners are accessing? Most importantly, are all teachers equipped and comfortable themselves using it? How many schools are sitting with laptops, tablets, and whiteboards that are never used? They're locked away in a safe. How many schools say they are e-learning schools, but currently all that means is that they load their worksheets online instead of printing them? COVID showed us the options technology gives us, but it also showed us the great lack in our country. Too many schools do not have adequate resources to fully function in a technologically advanced world. How many South African children go off to university and are faced with the task of compiling an essay, typing it, adhering to font and spacing requirements, and referencing for the first time after 13 years in school? I say all of this to say, it's not that we're not doing anything right, because in this talk alone, there are a number of educators doing exceptional work every single day. And I hope we always remember to celebrate and acknowledge those that go over and above for their own development and those of their learners. But I do think we need to have an honest conversation and an honest look at our systems. We need to find our strengths and further elevate them. We need to find our weaknesses and correct them. We cannot proudly say we are doing the best we can until we are able to equip every teacher with the resources, the skills, and the support they need to teach holistically. And until all our children leave the school system as balanced, holistically developed learners. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was a mouthful, but I think what I loved about what you said is that you not only highlighted problems, but practical and very tangible solutions that are relevant for the world that we live in today. You know, you said that we need to change how and what we teach, but I want to even stretch that a bit further to say that the world of work is changing. And so we not only need to change what and how, but we also need to change the why. Why are we teaching what we're teaching in the classroom? It doesn't make sense for us to be teaching, for instance, uniformity, when the world outside there is not asking for uniformity anymore. I am a technology entrepreneur and I don't care for uniformity. It means absolutely nothing for me. And one of the biggest employers like Google don't care about uniformity. And yet it's still something that we're pushing. With regards to your hair policies, issues of race, sex, gender, sexual orientation, we failed, point blank period. If you look, for instance, at the Brackenfell issue, where matriculants decided on their own that they would exclude a group of Black children from their own self-organized matric dance. What that meant for us is that after 27 years of democracy, we have failed. And so I think that, you know, when you say what you're saying, that we need to be honest and we need to be truthful. We're not having the honest conversations because we're so blinded by this forced guise of the Rainbow Nation that clearly doesn't exist. If we've got a 13-year-old Zuleka Patel, she was 13 when she started protesting, and she's now 19, protesting against racist hair policies in our schools that has now started a whole revolution. You've got, for instance, Kia Munama, who's also on that wavelength of trying to make schools less racist. And we recently also had a panel, you know, a media statement with another, you know, school. I mean, it's happening all over the country where children are actually saying enough is enough. You're racist, you're sexist, you're queerphobic, and we don't want it anymore. We can't stand for it. Whew. I think the conclusion that we can have, and not just from your own conversation, Sisi, or rather contribution, but from everyone's contribution, is that there has to be a willingness, and it doesn't necessarily have to be political will. The will can even be the will of the community, the will of the community that we're not going to allow our schools to be dilapidated schools. We're not going to allow our schools to have inequitable curriculum or inequitable infrastructure or what have you. We have to be the ones to lead ourselves. We have to be the ones to make the change that we want to see. When those children were protesting for fees falling, what did the parents have to say? What did the immediate community have to say about that? It's time for us to stop wanting political leaders to be the ones to make the change, but for us to start organizing our own communities, for us to start collaborating, working with one another, whether you are from Uganda, whether you're from South Africa, it doesn't matter. For us to begin to say, what do we envision to be, as Ma'am Yvonne Chakachaka said, education in our society? What does it mean to be a well-educated person who's going to contribute meaningfully? And what are some of the environmental issues that we have to tackle? Whether it's teachers who are being sexually harassed and abused, whether it's children who are being raped, whether it's women who don't have an opportunity to become principals because they are women, whether it's infrastructure that is inaccessible for people with disabilities and for queer people. We need to come together outside of waiting for politicians to do it ourselves, to decide and to determine what the future of education is for our society. And with that having been said, thank you so much to all of our speakers who've contributed from unpacking what the issues are, from the leadership structures in our schools and abuse, different forms of gender-based violence in our schools, to unpacking what education ought to be and what we should be looking from a conceptual perspective, to unpacking the re-engineering of education in our society. What does the new educational order for this Aquarian age, for this rebellious, unwanting of inequity age look like? Thank you so much. I'm going to hand over to you then.
I see Jesse's hand is up.
Lost reception for a while. I see that you are winding up. I would want to know, can I make a few comments because there's something I needed to say desperately? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, please go ahead.
I can go ahead. Okay. I just wanted to say the one thing I feel we need to be clear about, and that's the problem of COVID-19 financing of education. To me, I think we need to be very, very clear that as long as financing of education is coming from neoliberalist perspectives, for example, IMF and Bretton Woods institutions, we are going to have a problem. In other words, the macroeconomics of financing education is something that needs to be looked at. Why am I saying that? From the place where I'm coming from, during COVID-19, we are seeing that if you are funded by IMF, which tells you that you can't increase salaries on your on the staff that is employed by government, and then you see that there is always this liberalization of the economy, and people are talking about privatization of institutions. This is a serious threat to us providing social services to the people, and teachers are one of the groups that have suffered a lot. I've heard here people talk about the need to be well paid ones, even having that COVID-19 might actually be facing, not even might, I'm very sure of it, the divide between the educated and uneducated is going to worsen. And guess who pays? The girls. You see that here in Malawi, defilement has gone up, the teen marriages have gone up, teen pregnancies have gone up, but nobody's budgeting for a girl that when she gives birth, she should go back to school. The problem of fees is still perpetuates. So I think we need to look at the policies. And I would want to emphasize that one of the problems that I find is that we might be talking about wanting to educate girls, looking at the quality, educate LGBTIQ, but very few of us are getting into the politics. Very few of us are becoming politicians and sitting on the table. And the truth of the matter is, if we are not in decision-making spaces, let's not be surprised when we put patriarchs on the table, and at the end, we end up with patriarchal decisions. I, for one, want to advocate that in the field of education, if you're going to get feminist curricula, feminist policy making, feminist laws and feminist promises, well, we need to get space on the table. More of our people need to be politicians, need to be councillors, need to be presidents. We need to make sure that's how we're going to actually, as they say, if you are not the one designing the menu, the chances are you are the menu itself, So I think when it comes to education, I would like us to see feminist models of funding education, crafting education. Then we're going to see that care is going to be budgeted for, salaries will be prioritized. The other thing that I really feel would be missing is, instead of our politicians actually expanding increase of education and the quality of education, make sure it's decolonized and it reaches the masses, it reaches the disabled. They are busy looting money that is supposed to go to do this. I think the link between corruption and how it makes a government fail to deliver services needs to be made even much more. I, for one, would like to see most of us in matches that are holding people accountable to make sure that education is actually feminized and actually, you know, and when I talk about feminizing education as an institution, then it would be more friendly to queer people, it would be more friendly to women, it will not be teaching boys to be patriarchs and telling them that religion says you are superior and all of that. To deconstruct that, I want to repeat, we need a space on the table. Let us not shun politics, let us be there. And when we get a feminist in power, let's support her and make sure that we've got more of those people so that the policies are supported. Because I'll tell you, we can talk all we want here, but if we are not the ones making the decision, we are not going to change this thing. I always say, if you don't do politics, it's going to do you. We need more of the us in there and actually change the politics. It will not change itself, because the bottom line is patriarchy is benefiting from teaching people that women are sexual commodities, they are there to be wives, they are there not to be powerful. We cannot, you can't use the master's tool to undo his own house. We need to actually have new tools. And to me, I don't know how much to emphasize it. Let's get in there and make sure that we are changing the politics. Thank you. Hello.
Hello, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Jesse. Tando, are you there?
Hi, Ma'am Ribuli, I'm here.
Okay. Dr. Jesse has just finished her inputs, so can we move on? We're losing time.
Yes, we can. So I have handed over to you to take on the final session.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we've had some very useful and very insightful contributions from all our speakers. I'm sitting here thinking, my goodness, there's so much that one can reflect on, just from each speaker. So I think also what I took from this was just such a great definition of the problem, but also at the same time, what it is that we need to do moving forward. So without taking from Dr. Ngobo, whom we asked to wrap up the session from us and give us reflections of what she took away and what her own experiences are in terms of the education sector. Over to you, Dr. Ngobo.
Thank you very much, Ruboile. Colleagues, good afternoon to all of you. Program Director, please allow me to acknowledge the presence of my District Director in this meeting, Ms. Shelley Molobi, who is the District Director of the Johannesburg East District. I also want to briefly introduce myself. I'm Tombigai Ngobo, the Deputy Chief Education Specialist in the Johannesburg East District under the leadership of Ms. Shelley Molobi. My role involves forming relationships with partners like Umlambo Foundation, who are assisting poor schools. And Program Director, in my conclusion remarks, I'm guided by the principles of thinking pedagogy and the lessons that I have learned from the 1956 Women's March. Because those women who were marching in 1956, they laid a strong foundation for us as women managers. So in my conclusion remarks, I would like to acknowledge them as well. From the first speaker in this conference, it is clear that women are still challenged and there's still more work to be done. Therefore, I just want to quote the Maslow hierarchy and before Bloom's taxonomy. That is the first suggestion that I'm concluding with in this conference, to say While we are challenged, because it is clear that women are challenged, learners are challenged, parents are challenged, teachers are challenged, school managers are challenged, district managers are also challenged. So I am suggesting the framework, which has 3 principles. 1, Maslow before Bloom. What do I mean by Maslow before Bloom? Usis Yuvan Chakachaka mentioned that in schools, we have learners who are child-held at houses and learners who are coming to school in an empty stomach. Therefore, Maslow, the Maslow hierarchy believes in psychological safety, belonging, esteem, and self-evaluation, while Bloom believes in academic activities. In other words, this principle is saying in practical, we cannot, as schools or education sector, be teaching learners in an empty stomach. We need to start by taking care of their psychological aspect, safety, belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. Belinda also mentioned talking about teaching learners holistically. Now, teaching learners holistically will mean we want learners to be able to concentrate for the full duration of the day. Therefore, Maslow comes in very handy in ensuring that learners are fed at school before we even let them sit inside the class and be taught. It's not only learners, program director who are challenged, parents as well. If we look at the COVID era that we are in, most parents are losing jobs. Therefore, they are having financial constraints. So to them, sending learners to school, the school is a safe hub for them. So we really require schools to be safe hubs, which are able to provide learners with all the necessity that they need. While we are doing that and changing policies almost every day and daily practice at school, teachers as well are getting anxious. With Maslow hierarchy, we want to say that teachers' mental health is important, because if the teacher's mental health is not taken care of, they will not be able to do all the duties that we are all expecting them to do. While saying that, taking care of the mental health of educators, staff development is very important. Whereby teachers, I think Usithandazile mentioned this, teachers need to be developed now and again. There are lots of changes that are happening. How do we expect a teacher who was trained 10 years ago to meet the demands of our COVID-19 era? So in that fashion, I am saying educators needs to be taken care of, because if we do not do this, they are the agents of change. The change that we are expecting, we will not see it. The school managers, in this platform, we are having women. The school managers, especially women, as clearly mentioned by the first speaker, they are challenged. They are challenged by things that we think it's small, but to them, it's cold up there. Therefore, I call for the ongoing mentorship of women managers as well, for us to be able to empower learners into the 21st century. District managers are also being challenged, because we are expected to go to school and manage things that nobody empowers us about. Hence, I say the Maslow hierarchy comes in handy here, whereby we look at the psychologically, the safety, the belonging, the esteem, and self-actualization of all the stakeholders that are involved in education, for us to be able to empower a learner to the 21st century. While talking about Maslow before Bloom, I also want to take a lesson that I have personally learned from the 1956 Women's March. I am saying to all of us as women in this platform, we need to be authentic. We need to be pillars of communities. We need to be ourselves. Remember our beliefs. We cannot be sitting in class with a learner who is hungry. because automatically that learner will not concentrate. Now, being authentic will mean, as women, we are not going to allow education to fail in our hands. We are going to make sure that we do our best in going out and seeking for assistance, because there is help outside. But we need to make sure that we have platforms like this now and again, whereby we are sharing information. If you will remember in the past, we will hear people talking about boys' club, because that is where you will find men playing golf and talking about their management approaches that they use in school. So with us as women as well, it is important for us to have platforms like this where we share information, where we share ideas, where we share where you can go out and seek for help, because we are all challenged. And we cannot allow education to fail into our hands. Secondly, I want to also mention that all the speakers were pointing into inequities in education. This is a long-term solution. This was clearly seen when schools were not physically accessible. We were able to see that there's inequality and inequity among our schools. Some schools were able to deliver while learners were at home. Some schools were not able to deliver at all when learners were at school, based on the challenges that are faced by schools, as mentioned by Belinda. Again, the inequities in education triggers pedagogical innovation towards blended learning in all schools for inclusive and equitable education for all. When we're speaking about inclusive education, that is where in education we will quote White Paper 6, which requires all learners to be included in school, irrespective of ability or whatever. Schools are being assisted in our days to admit all kinds of learners, irrespective of where the learner is coming from, irrespective of ability or disability. Therefore, in this kind of platforms, that is where we can also share how we can implement the contents and the guidelines of White Paper 6. We also have White Paper 7, which speaks of blended learning, or which speaks of transforming learning and teaching through information and communication technologies. Now, the long-term solution that addresses the inequities in education cannot stand on its own, because we have seen during the level 5 lockdown where some schools were inaccessible at all. Therefore, I want to blend this long-term solution that addresses the inequities in education with the collaborative partnership across sectors in approaching education. I am saying this because this is my passion. As I mentioned in my introduction, my role is to form a relationship with partners. If we as education sector collaborate with private sectors and table our challenges, we will be able to see the difference in our schools. But if we sit in our schools and not collaborating with partners across the sectors, it's going to be challenges and challenges today and tomorrow. So again, with this being said, collaborative partnership across sectors, we will require women to be instructional and visionary leaders. Because if you are an instructional leader at a school, you know what you want from your school. You are also a visionary leader. You've got a vision as to what is it that you want to see in your school. Therefore, we will have to all go out in our different levels in approaching private sectors to come on board and assist us in our schools, because there are challenges that are facing schools. In closure, Program Director, I want to quote Charlotte Manamatlege when she says, "This work is not for yourself. Kill that spirit of self and do not live above your people, but live with them. And if you can rise, bring someone with you. Close quotation. In this quotation, Charlotte Maxeke is saying to us as women specifically, we need to empower women, young women. We don't have to forget them so as to strengthen the cycle of women in management. Program Director, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ngobo. Thank you so much. I think that was a really wonderful wrap up. You really kind of really reflected very well on the essence of what every speaker was saying, and also added your insights, which I found really very useful as well. You know, I learned so much every day, and from everybody, from all of you that have spoken today, just at a point where I thought I'm really getting to understand the education sector, I've learned so much more, and I realized that there is so much that one needs to get their heads around. I really like your ending, I mean, you know, you said so much, but when you talk about the spirit of self and that this profession is really not aligned to that. It's not about self, but it's about the collective. It's about empowering each other. It's about working together. It's about bettering ourselves. So I think that was really a very nice kind of wrap up at the end. So thank you very much, Dr. Ngobo. And I also actually must say that I'm looking forward to working with yourself and your district. So thank you very much for that. On my side, I just want to thank every single one of you that attended today. I want to thank all the speakers that were so gracious with their time and with their insights. So from Umlambo, we really thank you, Tando. Thank you for facilitating the conversation. I think it was a really great conversation. I see, you know, the comments that are in the chats, and I'm getting them also on my WhatsApp. People are very happy. They feel that it was insightful. They've learned a lot. You know, Dr. Jessie, I can never stop listening to you. So thank you very much for those. And I just enjoy the way that you're able to tell it as it is. You know, Mami Yvonne, just your understanding. I liked very much when Mami Yvonne talked about the tension that teachers face from both inside the classroom and outside. And to you, Belinda, you know, when you talk about alternative ways of educating our people, you know, going back to basics, going back to our roots, I think that is very useful. And I think it's very brave that we are now, you know, you are able to talk about it and say, hang on, we need to challenge established truths. We need as Africans to look within ourselves, what works for us, and move on that. So Thandazile, I can't, you know, honestly, your inputs were such, and for such a young lady, I'm very impressed. You really defined the problem so well. So well. And I like the way that you are able to also offer solutions, you know, to say, this is what needs to be done. This is what the problem is, and this is how we can move forward. So thank you so much to all of you. Tando, thank you again for facilitating and your inputs as well. You know, you have shared with us a lot of your experiences, a lot of, you know, your concerns. So I think that was very useful. Again, I say thank you to all of you. Most thank you to my partners at Teachers Can, Minge. I couldn't have done this without you. So thank you. Umlambo is really looking forward to working with you. And again, on behalf of our founder, Dr. Umlambo Nguga, we say thank you to you, Minge, and your organization, and to all the speakers. We hope we can invite you again. We hope that you will be gracious again to give us your time, because we really need to do this again. So thank you to all of you. Thank you.
And I also just want to say thank you from Teachers Can for this fantastic opportunity, and also to all the speakers and to everyone who attended. Such a fantastic event and so important. So thank you from Teachers Can, myself and Teachers Can.
Thank you, Miguel.
Yes. Ma'am Ribuile, just the final announcement. We are going to be starting a 10-week course with the United Nations Association of Chicago. My organization and brand have collaborated, and we're going to provide free 1.5 sessions every Friday evening. And the purpose of the sessions are to teach on concepts like equity, intersectionality, anti-racism, and feminism. And then we're going to also be looking at Palestine and Israel's conflict from a historical perspective. And then we're going to cap off those 10 weeks by looking at restorative justice and feminism as mechanisms of conflict resolution, not only in Palestine and Israel, but in other contexts of conflict all around the world. It is totally free. All of the participants get a certificate at the end if they attend 8 or more of the sessions. I've put the link to the opportunity inside of the chat box, but I will also ask that you please circulate the advert around all the people who registered for this event. The speakers and the educators that we have for this event are absolutely out of this world. You do not want to miss these educational sessions, especially for the type of leaders and people that we have in this room. This is not to be missed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tando. I see we've got a hand up. I'm not sure if you're able to indulge the person, Tando.
Yes, sure. Perfect. I don't mind at all. You can speak.
Thank you. It's Mailula Nakedi. Do you want to say something? You've got your hand up. Tando, I think we can wrap.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Tiboile and the Umlambo Foundation. Thank you so much. This was a wonderful and important conversation. Thank you.
A good afternoon to all of you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Ribo. Thank you, Tando. Thank you,
Bye.
Meg.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.